guys, I'm back out here working on the 85K10, and in today's video I just got done installing ORD's Sway Bar correction system. You can see that right here, painted in the gloss black. And I wanted to put this video together because this is probably the cheapest and easiest upgrade you can make on a lifted square body truck to improve the overall ride quality of the truck. So what I'll do is I'm going to go over exactly what all is included in the kit and some of the prep work that I did ahead of time to get this ready to install. And then I will go over briefly kind of why this kit improves the ride quality, because I know this is something that I hadn't thought a lot about, and you don't really think of the sway bar as something that's really going to improve your ride quality that drastically. So I'll go through that, and then I'll go over how to install the kit. It's pretty straightforward, yeah, we'll go from there. So that is my plan for this video today. Alright, so this is the box that I got from Off-Road Design. I just opened it up. You can see it comes with a sticker. These guys make a lot of different stuff for square body trucks if you haven't checked them out. And you can see this is the sway bar correction and disconnect system for the 73 to 87 GM trucks. It's all wrapped up here. Looks like they just used some packing tape. And I don't think there's anything else in the box. No, that's it. So yeah, it's all just wrapped up in that packaging here. So what I'll do is I'll get this unpackaged, lay the different parts out, and we'll go through what all is included in the kit. Alright, so I got all the parts and pieces here laid out, the instruction manual with all your component list, and you can see everything is sitting here. So the first thing that comes in the list are two sway bar disconnect brackets, and you can see those right here. These are bare metal brackets. Second thing is the disconnect pin with clips. You've got two of those. They're sitting right here. We've got two steel sleeves, 1-inch OD. Those are over these two grade 8 bolts. Let's see what else we got. We've got the bushing inserts, 4 of those. So those are all right here. Looks like they might have been lightly greased. See that inside the ID of the bushing there. So those are part of the kit. We've got our two grade 8 bolts. We already saw those, the sleeves over top of them. And then we've got a sway bar hold-up bracket. That's here also in bare steel. So this is everything that is included in the kit. You've got an instruction manual on how to install it, and then a little picture there that shows you the system once it's installed. So I will work on getting things prepped up. Now before I start install, there is some assembly and prep work that needs to be done. You see these bushings have to be installed in these sway bar brackets. So they just simply get inserted just like that. Usually use a dead blow just to knock them in place. They do look like they're lightly greased, but I'm going to add just a little bit of grease to these just so you don't have any issue with squeaking down the road. But the big thing is these sway bar brackets and that disconnect bracket is all bare steel. So I'm going to do a little bit of prep work to get these things painted before I install them. Now before I do that, I want to walk through why this kit is important on a lifted truck. Now the first thing to understand with the sway bar is its intended purpose is to prevent the body from rolling as you're going around corners or bumps or anywhere where one side of the truck may be uneven from the other. So the sway bar really is a torsional spring that keeps both sides of the truck, or at least attempts to keep both sides of the truck level. So as one side rises up, the sway bar acts against that to keep the truck level. Now you can see there are 2 points where the sway bar is connected to the frame, and then it's also connected to your spring perch on both sides. You can see that there on the driver's side and on the passenger side. So really what this is doing is, as the body or the frame starts to roll, the sway bar keeps tension, and that bar wants to stay level the entire time. So if one side starts to roll, it will pull it back to kind of keep the truck completely level. Now the sway bars are designed from the manufacturer, in this case GM, with a certain amount of tension. Like I said, it's a torsional spring, so there's a certain amount of tension in that spring that goes into the entire ride quality of the truck. And what happens is, as you start lifting the truck up, you're actually increasing the spring constant, or the attention, I guess, in that spring. So what happens is, if you start doing a 2 or 3, 4, 6-inch lift on these trucks, you're adding more and more tension to that sway bar. And now when you start cornering the truck or going over bumps, that spring is a lot stiffer than it would be, so it's pulling the other side down at a much higher rate. And this is going to cause the truck to just ride a lot stiffer than it would otherwise. So really, the sway bar correction system is going to give that sway bar a little bit more articulation. It's going to raise it up, and that way you don't have that added tension in the spring or in the sway bar, and that will improve your ride quality. And then on top of it, when you're off-roading, being able to disconnect that sway bar really allows for full articulation of the suspension, and it can hugely improve your off-road capability. So there's really 2 benefits to this system, both your on-road drivability and your off-road capability with this. So I'll link a video that kind of explains sway bars in a little bit more detail, because I don't want to go into too much detail in this video, but I did at least want to give an introduction, because I know it's tough to understand how is this really making an improvement on the truck. So that's why, with that said, let's jump into getting some of this prep work done so we can get this installed. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is, I've got some carbon choke here. I'm going to spray that on these brackets, because there's a lot of adhesive left over from the packaging tape that ORD had used to package these things up. So you can use some brake parts cleaner or whatever you've got laying around, just to get that adhesive off the face of these brackets. That way we've got a clean surface to start with when we go to start prepping these. Now, I did want to say the overall quality that ORD provides is great. They got these things shipped out and packaged up extremely quickly. There is a little bit of slag there from the welds, but honestly, it's nothing that's going to hurt the functionality of these brackets. So in an ideal world, yeah, this would be cleaned up, but overall, it's not an issue. So now that I've got the adhesive off, I'm going to come back with a red Scotch-Brite pad and just start scuffing up the outer surface of these brackets, and that'll allow me to give the paint something to adhere to. You know, ORD, it would be nice if they offered these painted as an option, just because a lot of guys are going to get these out of the packaging and immediately install them on the truck, and within a few months they're going to be rusted out, being bare metal like that. So it would be nice if they offered these with a painted or primed option. But since they don't, I highly recommend just going ahead and spending the time prepping them and getting them in some sort of primer and paint, just so you don't have to worry about it down the road. You can install them and not touch them again. So once you've got them scuffed up everywhere, the next step is come back with some denatured alcohol and clean the surface really well. This will probably be twice that I'll do this, so I'll clean it once here, blow it off with some shop air, and then when I'm ready to spray, typically I hang them up somewhere and then clean them one final time before I start spraying. So, and really you want to use a rag or some gloves, that way the grease from your fingers isn't leaving a spot that paint will not adhere to as you're doing your final clean with these. Okay, so with everything prepped, since I'm not at the shop, all I did was find a tree, hang these things up, and I'm going to come through with some self-etching primer. You can see that here. Spray these things down. I cleaned them one more time once I hung them up. So I'm going to spray them with this self-etching primer, probably do 2 or 3 coats of this. Make sure I get inside of that cavity, but you got to be careful not to put too much paint up in there, because then you won't be able to install your bushing. So try to get some primer up in there, but not too much. Okay, so next thing I'll do is come through, spray a light coat of this self-etching primer all over the surface of these. And like I said, I'll probably do 2 to 3 coats of this before I come back and put my top coat on. And it depends on your outside temperature how much the setup time is for these primers like this. I think this is like a 5-minute set time at 70 degrees or something like that. So I just give it a few minutes and then come back and apply a second coat. And once it's fully covered, it's good to go. You can move on to your base coat. Alright, I got my couple coats of primer on here. You can see it's kind of set up. So what I'll do is come back with some gloss black and go ahead and start getting these things painted. And what I ended up doing is I sprayed 3 coats of the gloss black on here, and that was plenty of coverage for these parts. And just keep in mind as you're spraying those areas where the bushings and pin goes, you'll want to limit coverage. Alright, final step here. I've got my 3 coats of gloss black on all the parts, and now I'm going to come back with some clear just to finish covering everything. So I'll probably just do 2 coats of this, really just to give it a little bit of durability once I get it installed, especially being under the truck. It's going to be rocks and stuff that are flung up, so this hopefully will help a little bit in keeping these things from chipping up too bad. Alright, so I let all the parts and pieces set up for a little over a day, and now I'm ready to start my assembly. So get yourself set up. I lightly greased these bushings, get them put into place here. Took a dead blow mallet and just smacked them until they sit completely flush in your sway bar bracket. And then you flip it over. Same thing with the other side. Get the bushing installed. Make sure it's completely flush. And then you can come back with your steel sleeve. Insert that through the bushing. And then you can take your dead blow and get that sleeve driven all the way through both bushings. And then that grade 8 bolt that is going to hold this bracket to your spring perch is going to feed right through the center of that steel sleeve. So you want to do the same thing for the other bracket, and then you'll be ready to start your install on the truck. Alright, so with the setup done, I'm going to get into the truck here and start my install of this sway bar correction kit. So first thing you want to do is loosen these forward mounts on the sway bar that attach it to the frame. So you can see back there's a spring perch. Right up here are the two mounts that attach the sway bar to the frame. So what I'm going to do is loosen both of these nuts. You got one on either side of each mount, so 4 total. You want to loosen these. That'll allow you to shift this sway bar back and forth to get it into place. Once you have all 4 of those nuts loose, you can come back and remove the bolt that's holding the sway bar to your spring perch. And an important note here is you do not need to lift the vehicle. You don't want the vehicle on uneven ground. You want it on level ground when you go to do this. Like we talked about, it is a torsional spring, so if you have things uneven, sway bar is going to be under load and you could hurt yourself or damage something on the truck. So keep that in mind. Alright, so this nut here takes an 11/16 socket. The bolt at the top takes a 5/8 socket. So loosen this up. You don't want to take it all the way off, just get it loose, and then you'll want to move around to the back. These ones on the opposite side are a little bit tougher to get to, just because that bolt head on the top is kind of captured up in there, but you are able to fit a socket. And then same thing on the passenger side. I'll loosen that forward nut first, just because it's easy to get to, and I'll switch around over to that rear nut and get that thing loosened as well. Alright, so now I'm ready to remove these bolts from the spring perch. So took my breaker bar, it's an 1 1/8" socket, got it broken free. Had to adjust the camera a little bit. This thing's got a lot of torque on it. I think it's like 130 foot-pounds or something, so it's going to take a little bit of force to get it broken free. But once you do, I just put a ratchet wrench on that to get it taken all of the way out. Now I'll move over to the other side. Same deal here. Put the breaker bar on, get the bolt broken free. And I'll come back with my ratchet wrench and get that bolt completely removed from the sway bar. Alright, now with both the bolts removed, I can take the sway bar and lift it up. That way I can get the ORD bracket installed in place. So just lift it up and move it out of the way. And now I'll get myself set up to install the bracket. So what I do is, take the washer that came off of the truck, put it in place. There was a second washer that came off of the truck that goes on the inside of the bracket. And then what I like to do is take some Loctite, some blue Loctite, and put it on the threads before I start the bolt. Now I'm ready to get that installed. So here on the driver's side, get the bracket in place, make sure your sway bar's out of the way, and then just get that bolt started. And what you'll want to do is get this tightened down to where it's just a little bit snug, but not all the way torqued down, because you'll likely have to adjust the bracket before you go to torque it in place. Then you can move over to the passenger side. Same thing, get that bolt started and get it snugged up, but don't torque it down yet. And you can see the sway bar sitting above that. I'm going to have to shift that over so that it falls into that bracket. As you can see here, I've got to shift that to the passenger side a little bit. So that's why we loosen those bolts that attach the sway bar to the frame. That way we can shift that over. So what I did is took my pry bar, got it up against the front spring, and then pried it over until I got it to fall into place. And then you can adjust it from there. That way you're able to get the pin slid into place. And you can see I put a little bit of grease on the pin just to help it not only slide into place, but also in the future, if I need to remove it, it'll come out a lot easier that way. And then your cotter pin as well, that's got to be snapped in to retain the pin. So it just pushes into place. Then you can move over to the driver's side. You can see on this side how the bracket's not lining up with the hole on the sway bar. I got it just a little bit too snug, so I'm going to loosen it up and twist that bracket until the holes line up. And then I can slide my pin into place and get the cotter pin installed. Alright, since I loosened up the driver side here, I'm going to tighten that back up. And I'll come back with my torque wrench and get this torque down to 130 foot-pounds. And you don't have a ton of range of motion torquing this on the driver's side, so it did take a little bit to get that fully torqued. Then I'll come over to the passenger side. Same thing here. Get that bracket snugged down really well. And then come back with my torque wrench and torque this side as well to 130 foot-pounds. Alright, so while you're on the passenger side, the next thing to do is to go ahead and install the hold-up bracket for the sway bar. So this bump stop here on the passenger side needs to be removed. There's a small nut that holds that in place, but pretty much this bracket gets installed in that location, and that way you can pull the pin on both sides of the sway bar and lift it up and then slide the pin through that bracket to hold it in place. That way if you're off-roading or whatever and you want to operate without the sway bar connected, you can do that. So you want to take that nut and completely remove it. You can see me doing this here. Get that thing completely removed. That way you can install the hold-up bracket onto the same stud. So slide that bump stop back into place, put the hold-up bracket on top of it. You can see that here, and then I'll take that nut and install it on the top, and that will retain both of those items. Of course, come back with your ratchet and get this thing snugged up. You don't have to go crazy with this. Just get it snugged up, that way it's not going to come loose and fall off on you. And you can see with that installed, I can lift up my sway bar. If I want to, slide the pin through that hole and that'll hold it up in place. Alright, and then the last step for the install is to come back to these front sway bar mounts and get them tightened up. ORD specifically calls out not to go crazy when tightening these down, just get them snug. If you go too tight with these, you're not going to be able to articulate the sway bar for when you're off-roading and you want to move it out of the way. You won't be able to move it. So just don't go crazy with these. Go around, get them tightened up, snug down, and they will be good to go. And then once you have all 4 of these bolts tightened down, you're done. That's it for the install of the kit. Alright, so that is it. I hope that this video was helpful in walking through the process for installing this kit and some of the reasons why it is it's beneficial for any lifted square body truck. I've definitely noticed an improvement in my ride quality since doing it, and I've only got a 2.5-inch lift on this truck, so the more lift that you have, the more improvement this kit can make by having it installed on your truck. So if it's something you're considering, it's definitely a cheap and easy kit to install that will improve both your on-road and off-road ride quality. So hope this was helpful. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. That way we can continue to make content like this.